Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about somebody that's hugely in the news, and that is Tucker Carlson, which we actually have his birth time. So we're going to be looking at his birth chart to see what's going on for him, what the future holds, and possibly even a little bit about him, because he has become a hugely popular personality on television, Fox News. I think most people know that he was fired recently, and it is absolutely seen in his chart. And to talk about his personality, who Tucker Carlson truly was according to his birth chart, and where he's going to be headed. What's his future? How can we see that from Vedic astrology? So before I continue on, I'd like to remind everyone that I'm having a conference here in Dallas. The dates are June 2nd through the 5th. And if you've ever wanted to come meet all the stars you know in Vedic astrology, come. We have the first class names, and it's going to be at a 5-star hotel. Check it out, June 2nd through the 5th in Dallas, Texas, futureofastrology.com. Now, one more thing, if you want to get my free newsletter, all my predictions delivered to your email address every single week, sign up from my website, galacticcenter.org, and from there you'll also see that I have a magazine, online magazine, comes out every month, interviews some of the most fascinating people in the world of astrology and metaphysics, as well as incredible articles and future predictions, all in this magazine for only $9.99 a month. Check it out, galacticcenter.org. Okay, so let me proceed, and we're going to look at Tucker Carlson's chart to see what we can see. So let's pull his chart up over here. And as we can see, Tucker Carlson has his ascendant is in Cancer, Cancer rising. So that is his first house. And Cancer is ruled by the moon. And wherever the moon goes in a chart is always going to be a focus or interest. Something about it throughout your life will be relevant. And that's the ruler of the chart, and his is the moon in the 11th house. Now he has the sun and the moon conjunct in the 11th house with Mercury. And the 11th house is, in Vedic astrology, said to be the house of great gains. And actually it is the money that you make from your work and your career. Why? Because it is the second house. Second house is money, from the 10th house, which is your work and your career. So with powerful planets in the 11th house, it means you will make a lot of money. Generally, it means success and large sums of money come to you, especially when you have the ruler of the second, which is the house of money, which is the sun. The sun rules Leo, and that's on the second house. So the ruler of the second, the sun, also goes to the 11th house of great gains. When there's a connection between houses 2 and 11, generally there's great wealth. There's opportunities to make a lot of money. And I have to say, Tucker Carlson has been extremely successful. Like him or not, he's very successful in his work. And let me tell you something else about the 11th house. The 11th house indicates people that you know, people that you are connected with, and it can actually represent very influential people. So as the 11th house is our friends, our groups, our organizations that we are connected with, it also is about highly influential people, depending on if you have positive or negative planets there. Tucker has both his sun, moon, and Mercury there. He knows some of the most influential people in the world. The sun is the king, the moon, and together, by the way, that means he was born under a new moon when the sun and the moon are together. In Vedic astrology, this is said to be a dark moon, and it makes the moon sometimes very difficult when it's dark. But when you have a bright moon, it brings awareness to you. A bright moon is when you're born under a full moon, or when the moon is very bright in the night sky. But a dark moon, I don't believe that it's negative like some Vedic astrologers. What I do know about the dark moon, it makes someone extremely introspective. You're pretty much an introvert, but all at the same time, when you throw this introverted placement in the 11th house, which deals with the public and friends and groups, you're out there. But still, all in all, you're extremely introverted at the same time. And this is the way he seems to be. He's constantly thinking, always in thought. He has Mercury conjunct the moon. Whenever I see that, I know that these are people that their mind and their thinking process is in overdrive all the time. They can't stop thinking. They don't know how to turn the mind off. And consequently, they overthink some things. It's Mercury moon, always, because the moon is the mind. Don't forget. Mercury is how we process our information, put them together, never stops churning and thinking and processing. They have problems falling to sleep at night. Another thing I might add about the sun that he has, he is born on May 16th. And individuals born between May 15th, 16th, and 17th will all have their sun conjunct the fixed star Agal. And that is called the demon star, and it deals with decapitation. So figuratively, what it means, it can deal with people that at times can lose their head. This is the sun when it is Agal is 1 degree of Taurus. So May 15th, May 16th, May 17th, it will be within the realm of this very, very difficult fixed star. And what I have found, a lot of people with this star born at this time, or either planets at close to 1 degree of Taurus, that they can have problems with addictions and losing their head. So I came to find out that Tucker Carlson is actually in recovery from alcohol, cigarettes. Yes, he's got that addictive type personality with this star being right on his sun. And that's a tough one. And it's in the 11th house, so his stuff is all public knowledge. So yes, he's had some issues with this. Now, even looking at this, he has Neptune opposed his sun, which is another indication that there can be problems with alcohol or drugs or some kind of overdoing any substance that will take you out of reality. And at times, he has to really be clear and make sure he is coming from a place of reality, because Neptune will take you to all sorts of imaginations. Yes, it can even deal with conspiracy theories. So he's got to be very cautious of where his mind, his intelligence takes him, because Neptune not only opposes his sun, but his moon as well. And with Neptune aspecting those planets in the 11th house, this can also indicate that friends may not always be on the up and honest with him. So this is a difficult chart with this. Neptune sits with Mars in the 5th house. And the 5th house is also said to be intelligence and the mind. And Mars-Neptune can sometimes be a little delusional. He's got to watch and be cautious that he's coming across in a clear, concise manner, because he can tend to go overboard with overthinking, overprocessing, and going to an extreme with thought. So this is in his 5th house. And Mars being in Scorpio, he might have some problems over time with children because this is the 5th house of children. But overall, Mars in Scorpio in the 5th house will bring incredible intellect and intelligence. He always wants to figure out how things are, why they work the way they do, the mechanics behind things. And one more thing I will say about this conjunction, in the 5th house, it can make him very much involved in his spirituality. And that brings me to where his Venus sits, because his Venus is exalted in the 9th house with Rahu. And that will bring him to being very spiritual. And I have read that Tucker Carlson is very religious, and that is part of what this Venus and Rahu in the 9th house will bring. But also it will bring a lot of wealth and favor from his family, his father. And I believe he is his step-grandmother. I should look this up, but I believe he is, through his stepmother or step-grandmother, is one of the ones that started Swanson's. This is extreme wealth in his family. He comes from very, very, very wealthy background. Let me put it that way. And if you'll notice, yes, it's on his mother's side, dealing with mother, because Venus rules the 4th house of the mother, and it is exalted, meaning it's all powerful with Rahu, bringing wealth and fortune to him through family. His Jupiter is with Ketu in the 3rd house. The 3rd house is the house of communications. This is his job. And the 3rd house is also the house of creativity, talent, and entertainers. Don't you know that the news and reporting has become the biggest entertainment in the world these days? Absolutely. People watched his show for entertainment. Maybe to learn something too, but it was mainly, he was a great and powerful entertainer because his Jupiter is the ruler of the 9th house, which can deal with publications, luck, and fortune, his father. But it goes to the 3rd house of learning, communications, entertainment. And Jupiter sits with Ketu. This magnifies this Jupiter all the more, and he goes to the depths. It's even in the sign of Virgo, which means he can be extremely detailed, scrutinizing, and possibly, as some people have said, difficult to work with this Jupiter Ketu in the 3rd house. And it even sits with Uranus, which tells me that when things happen to him, for good or bad, they happen suddenly and unexpectedly. And suddenly and unexpectedly, the carpet's ripped out from underneath him as he lost his job as the most popular speaker on Fox News. How does this happen? And I don't even pretend to know exactly what's behind all this, because I'm certain with the way that the media is today, depending on what channel you watch, you're going to get different information. And I don't trust either these days. They have been self-serving. And what I'm trying to say from this, we don't know the truth. We don't know really what's going on behind the scenes. And you know what else? I don't even think Tucker does. That's how deep this looks to me. But this Jupiter and Venus, they aspect each other. Venus is aspected by Jupiter, and Jupiter is aspected by Venus, and they're tied up with Rahu and Ketu. This is extraordinarily powerful, the 3rd and the 9th house. Jupiter is aspecting the 9th house, and it rules it. Very powerful for issues around the father and also the law. issues around law and what's going on. But let me go to where his Saturn is, because I find it fascinating that Tucker Carlson just entered his Saturn Mahadasha. That's the Vedic predictive tool we use, the dashas. And he entered Saturn, and this is a 19-year cycle. In January of 2022, he came to a great rise, but look at his Saturn. It just so happens to be in Aries. And that means his Saturn is in the weakest, worst sign it can be in. Its debilitation sign. But luckily, Saturn being in Aries, his Mars is extraordinarily strong. And so that reflects the power of Saturn, the dispositing planet Mars, ruler of Aries. And it goes to the 5th house, which is the house that is very powerful for mind, creativity, and his future. But I do think that Saturn, going into Saturn, is part of the reason why his job was taken from him. Now, if we add in to look down the road of his future, what do we see? We see so much more. And one more thing I want to add to this that is vitally important is to always remember to look at a chart from the moon as the ascendant. I always say look from the ascendant and the moon. It gives more information. It doesn't discount the information you've already assessed. It adds to the picture. What are they feeling? And look at this. From the 11th house from the moon, remember in the Vedic chart, you always count clockwise. So going from the moon, counting around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you see he's got Venus, Rahu, exalted Venus in the 11th house. And from that vantage point, this tells me he knows the most powerful people in the world. And yes, they can be of help and benefit to him because of this powerful Venus in the 11th house. It doesn't get better than this. And I'll tell you something else that Rahu represents: foreigners. So you're going to find that there's going to be foreigners that are going to help him more than people of his culture and country. But looking at this, let me go on with what's happening transit-wise, because the transiting planets give us the picture of what we can expect in more detail in the future. And looking at this, the transit of Jupiter is in Aries, just entered Aries, and he lost this job. That doesn't make any sense, because Jupiter is the great benefic and always gives opportunities, especially with the Cancer rising, because Jupiter is a great benefic for Cancer rising. It is the planet that rules his 9th house of luck and blessings. But here's what was going on when he was fired. It was right around the time Jupiter hadn't given him full force and power yet, because the transit of Saturn sits in his 8th house, transiting Saturn, that is. And as it's transiting the 8th house, it is fully aspecting natal Saturn when he was fired. So Saturn was around 8 degrees of Aquarius, and Saturn's full Vedic aspect is 3 placements from where it is located. So Aquarius to Aries, 1, 2, 3, it was a full exact aspect. Saturn. And here's what you must know. When you're in a dasha, that transiting planet has more power. So he's in Saturn, and Saturn took the job away as Saturn aspected natal Saturn. And I must say, he's in for more, because even though Well, let me go back to another variable at hand here. The eclipses. The solar eclipse that just happened April 20th occurred in Aries at 6 degrees of Aries, almost exactly on his Saturn. When you have an eclipse in the 10th house, you're going to have a major change with your job. It is always the case. Eclipses are wipeouts. Something big happened at the time, around the time that this eclipse happened. So you have the eclipse in the 10th house hitting a Saturn, and Saturn transiting Saturn is aspecting Saturn. Of course there was something huge that happened concerning his work, his career. And I might add this. Notice where transiting Neptune is. Neptune is at 2 degrees of Pisces. Look at his Jupiter, 2 degrees of Virgo. Neptune is exactly aspecting his Jupiter in the 3rd house. Neptune is always deception, deceit, denial, and not seeing things clearly. There is a great deception going on in his life. And you might think maybe it's he that's deceptive, or he that is the one that is causing the problems. But I've worked with astrology long enough to know that when Neptune is aspecting one of your personal planets, you will be deceived. You can't see something coming up. He couldn't see it coming. Maybe he could, but he didn't believe it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have took the chances he did. So Neptune means great deception, can't seeing things clearly. Neptune's going to cross over his Jupiter by opposition a number of times. And then it's going to move up and hit his Rahu in a year and a half. And he has even more to face with deception and problems. Now, Jupiter does rule the 9th house, which can deal with legal problems. And he can't see how possibly, I think he could even be framed for things that he maybe is unaware of. There is so much that he cannot see that is coming up. He must be careful. But overall, around the 10th of May, transiting Jupiter will hit his natal Saturn. And this will influence this whole month of May. And he is being offered some of the most lucrative jobs in the world. I read somewhere that one of the news companies is offering him $100 million. Hey, that's a huge opportunity if you ask me. I don't know if he's capable or able to take it legally. There's a lot of things going on around this. But yes, this is a huge opportunity while Jupiter is in his 10th house. Will his life be clear and simple? Not at all. Not with Neptune aspecting his Jupiter. And remember, his Jupiter's in the 3rd house of communications. Lots of problems are ahead. And while Jupiter is there, he will get these opportunities. So there's good things, but there's difficult things happening all at the same time. And next year in 2024, he's going to come into even some better opportunities as transiting Jupiter starts to go into Taurus May of 2024 through May of 2025. What Jupiter is going to do is going to cross over his Sun, his Moon, his Mercury, and his natal Jupiter will be aspected by transiting Jupiter. It will cast a perfect trine. If you will notice, his Sun is 2 degrees of Taurus, and his Jupiter is 2 degrees of Virgo. They're in an exact Earth trine. And when transiting Jupiter, hits 2 degrees of Taurus in May of 2024, that's going to be the best time of his life. That's where things will start moving forward for him. And the people that he knows will come around and help him. And they're extraordinarily powerful. And that's where I see 2024 and 2025 will be his greatest time. And he will be well protected during those times. But I have to say, noting the fact that, well, transiting Saturn is aspecting Saturn, Neptune is opposing his Jupiter, he has to be extraordinarily careful because there is great scandals going on. Remember my book I wrote on Neptune, Scandals? Neptune causes scandals. We are going to be looking at some of the biggest scandals ever that Tucker Carlson is going to reveal and therefore be a part of. Because you can't uncover the truth and the corruption and the scandals on some of the most powerful people in the world without them shaming, disgracing, and trying to ruin you. And that's what I see. But for the long part, Tucker's going to make it, and he's going to come out ahead. 2023 is going to be a year of great tests and trials and tribulations. Even though he is being offered some of the most lucrative jobs in the world, but we'll see. He'll come out, he'll make it, but he does have some demons of his own that he's struggling with, especially with a goal on his sun. But for the most part, he is incredibly talented, intelligent, and he seeks the truth. And I think the truth will come out. It's going to be tough. You'll see. But he's going to be in the news a lot. Mark my words with that one. So with that, I'd like to close. Remember, if this has sparked any interest in learning Vedic astrology, how did I come up with all of this? Remember, I have an online school called the University of Vedic Astrology. Check it out. Become one of my students, and I will guide you and teach you all of these practices so that you can see your future as well. So with that, I'll close. Thank you.